Hello, Magic players and collectors. Welcome back to the Land Library. I'm your librarian, and in this episode of Legendary Locations, we're back in Kamigawa with Eiganjo. But of course, it's not just Eiganjo, but the entire region around it, which is the Towabara Plains. Granted, it's still mostly Eiganjo, since quite a bit of the plains is pretty empty, but that's a topic for later in the lore section. First, let's get into those cards. Of course, Eiganjo itself is the first on the list of cards, but Eiganjo, just like Beseiju, has two cards: Eiganjo Seat of the Empire and Eiganjo Castle, both of which are legendary cards, and that's actually all the legendary cards for Towabara. It's the least legendary dense area in all of Kamigawa, although technically, through the deforestation of the Jukai Forest for the expansion of Tawashi, the plains does kind of absorb Beseiju and Okina, but that doesn't really count, and I already made a whole episode about that anyway, so let's just keep it to the two. The older of the two, Eiganjo Castle, can tap for a white or pay a white and tap to prevent 2 damage that would be dealt to a target legendary creature during this turn. And Eiganjo's Seat of the Empire can also tap for a white, or can channel for 2 generic and a white, or 1 generic less for each legendary creature you control to move it down to potentially just 1 white, and then it deals 4 damage to any attacking or defending creature. This version also has an extended and borderless art version. The original Eiganjo Castle doesn't have any other version. Now for creatures, there is Eiganjo Exemplar, Eiganjo Freeriders, Kanda Lord of Eiganjo, Michiko Kanda Truthseeker, Ishimaru Hound of Kanda, Inner Chamber Guard, Kanda's Hanamoto, Misako the Humorless, Kyumaru First to Stand, Descendant of Kyumaru, Kyodai Soul of Kamigawa, Araba Moth Rider Samurai, Yosei the Morning Star, Ao the Dawn Sky, Takeno Samurai General, Takeno's Cavalry, Imperial Subduer, and all of the Kitsune, so Sensei Golden Tail, Opal Eyes Kanda's Yojimbo, 8.5 Tails, Light Paws Emperor's Voice, Bright Palm, Soul Awakener, Pearl Ear, Imperial Advisor, and then all of the regular Kitsune, like Moth Rider Patrol, Blade Blizzard Kitsune, Golden Tail Disciple, Golden Tail Trainer, Kitsune Ace, Hotshot Mechanic, Kitsune Blade Master, Kitsune Bone Setter, Kitsune Dawnblade, Kitsune Diviner, Kitsune Healer, Kitsune Lore Weaver, Kitsune Mystic, Kitsune Palliator, Kitsune Riftwalker, Pious Kitsune, Samurai of the Pale Curtain, Selfless Samurai, Seven-Tail Mentor, Silver Storm Samurai, and Split-Tail Miko. And then there's even a couple of Planeswalkers, the Wandering Emperor and Kaito Shizuki. Both of these characters have multiple cards, but the other ones are like on other planes because, of course, the Planeswalkers. But these are the Kamigawa ones, and so their other cards are kind of irrelevant to this purposes, so we're going to ignore them, although they do also have a joint Planeswalker card, which is Heroes of Kamigawa, and I will count that one. Then for spells, we've got Charge Across the Abara, Hail of Arrows, Imperial Oath, Regent's Authority, When We Were Young, and Wanderer's Intervention. Moving on to enchantments, we've got Ghostly Prison, Day of Destiny, Befriending the Moths, The Fall of Lord Kanda, Michiko's Reign of Truth, and the Restoration of Eiganjo. All but the first two are sagas, and they all transform. I didn't really want to read the names of the transformed things, just for no extra confusion, but just so you know, they do transform. For artifacts, there's only one, it's just that which was taken. And then for lands, the best part, we have a couple of maybes, which is Tranquil Garden and Secluded Courtyard. These are most likely in Eiganjo, but I can't really say for certain. There isn't anything that really confirms it. And although not from Eiganjo or even Kamigawa, the Blossoming Sands in the Kamigawa Neon Destiny set definitely has art of Eiganjo. And that's actually it for lands. There's just 2 maybes and an art. And, well, I guess there is, of course, the Eiganjo cards. And one last thing before the final tally is the Tawashi Plain card. Side note, I used this art in the Beseiju episode without knowing it was actually from a card. I just thought it was art. And then I did the same thing with the Shiv plane card in the Shiv episode, and I should have included that as a card, but I didn't know about plane cards yet, but I do know now, so I'm adding in this little update correction, whatever, to the Shiv episode. Anyways, that's a total of 45 creatures, 3 planeswalkers, 6 spells, 6 enchantments, 1 artifact, and 2 lands plus 2 maybes and an art, and then 1 plane, for a grand total of 64 or 67 cards. The Towabara Plains is a vast open area in the center of Kamigawa. As you might expect from a plains, this is the major white mana-attuned region of Kamigawa. With its large open areas and mostly flat terrain, it was the perfect place for humans to start farming and building towns. But for a very long time, the peoples of the plains were pretty scattered and constantly in conflict, until 3150 AR when a man named Takeshi Kanda was born to the plains. He was a brilliant and ambitious strategist, driving out local bandits and uniting local warlords to establish his power. He started growing a lot more and built Eiganjo Castle in the direct center of the known lands. Maybe not quite literally, he probably had people do it for him, but regardless, Eiganjo Castle was built for Kanda to rule from. And he ruled there for many years, with Egon Town growing around it in parallel to his own growing power. Eventually, he was able to unite all of Towabara, so villages like Hagi, Kodaira, and Kofu started to flourish and populate the plains with more and more villages. There was even a Kitsune village on the edge of the plains called Suzuki, and with the trading town Kofu in between Egan and Suzuki, the humans and Kitsune started to intermingle a bit and started to trade, eventually leading to them joining forces as allies, and many Kitsune even moving to Egan, starting to become very influential, even having high positions in the imperial court, such as Wise Muzzle, an extremely powerful and talented healer who later became Eight and a Half Tails, helped Kanda with many tasks like healing Hagi Village after a plague broke out there, and researching the spirit realm and the veil between the realms. But after Kanda's daughter Michiko was born, and his wife died in childbirth, he became bewitched by the idea of immortality. He performed a ritual to break the barrier between the mortal realm and spirit realm, to go in and capture a piece of the most powerful kami, Okagachi. This piece, after being broken off, became its own kami called Kyodai, and was imprisoned in the powerful artifact, That Which Was Taken, which did grant Kanda immortality and stopped his aging, as well as giving him immense power. Unfortunately, it also pissed off the kami and sparked the Kami War. This war raged for 20 years and affected most of Kamigawa, not just the plains. If you've watched the Beseiju episode, you'd remember that some of the Jukai forest was lost to this war too. Although it did also turn a huge part of the Towabara Plains into an empty wasteland dubbed the Araba. The city Reito, where the kami first attacked, was completely destroyed, and much of the surrounding smaller villages were too. But Eiganjo Castle itself survived for most of the war, all up until Okagachi himself manifested into the mortal realm, and with his overwhelming power, it was just too much to defend against, and Eiganjo was reduced to rubble. In order to end the war, Michiko freed Kyodai from That Which Was Taken, and together they struck down their battling fathers. With the death of Okagachi, the veil between realms was completely destroyed, and the realms merged. However, still being an immortal, they had to petrify Kanda, and then they shattered him and scattered the pieces in the Jukai forest. He never truly died, and is still in pieces across the forest to this day. But with the war ended, and few left who even knew why it started, many still thought Kanda was their protector against the kami enemies, so his own daughter teaming up with a kami made them pretty suspicious and resistant to her efforts. However, Michiko revealed that her father was in fact the one who started the war with his blind ambitions, and she took charge to reunite and heal not just the Towabara Plains, but all of Kamigawa. It was a difficult task that took many years, and despite refusing the title of emperor, she was widely considered to be the first emperor of Kamigawa. During this time, Eiganjo Castle did get rebuilt, although it was less of a castle and more of a capital this time, and with peace restored, there was not really a whole lot going on except for the gradual rebuilding and growth for several hundred years, until the next big notable event of the reclaiming of the Araba. This was done with the building of the city Tawashi. Tawashi grew very big very fast, and encroached pretty deep into the Jukai forest. But I did already cover that in the Beseiju episode, so check that out if you want more on Tawashi. Now, in modern-day Eiganjo, the castle is home to the Imperial Court and the most prestigious samurai training school, Golden Tail Academy. The current emperor is the planeswalker known as the Wanderer. She was, of course, born in Eiganjo, and as an adult, ignited her planeswalker spark and left Kamigawa to join the Gatewatch and fight the new Phyrexians, leaving Lightpaws as acting regent. After failing to prevent the new Phyrexian invasion of the multiverse, she came back to Kamigawa to instead fight them off. And after the invasion ended, there was actually an open omen path to Ravnica left behind in Eiganjo, opening up interplanar trade. And that's currently where the timeline ends. Eiganjo has actually had quite the legacy with both of its cards. The original Eiganjo castle, as far as I can tell, was pretty irrelevant for Standard in its time, but has carved out quite the spot for itself in Commander, especially in decks that have very small commanders like Yoshimaru and Gyata, or legendary heavy decks like Captain Sisei and Yoshimaru again. Eiganjo Castle actually sees over 50% usage in Yoshimaru decks. Its ability to cheaply protect legendaries is quite useful in Commander where there's so many legendaries, and although 2 is not a lot of blocking, it can mean the difference between life and death for anything with only like 1 or 2 toughness, and can be a powerful safeguard for small commanders. It just being on the field is a deterrent from trying to hit a small commander with a like burn spell because it can just be blocked. But its limited protection makes it much less desirable in decks with bigger creatures that can take a hit, so it only sees around 5% usage in white decks. Eiganjo's Seat of the Empire, on the other hand, is a total powerhouse in Commander, and was not exactly a huge meta card like Beseiju was, but it did see a bit of competitive play. Since channeling discards the card, having multiple copies in a standard deck definitely was beneficial, but with its channel cost getting reduced by legendaries, that tips it a bit more towards Commander, where legendaries are almost guaranteed. With a lot of extra legendaries in play, this land basically is just a 1 mana burn spell in white, which is pretty rare, and since it's not actually even a spell, it's safe from being countered and can be used both offensively or defensively, or alternatively can even target your own creatures for a weird combo. Like, let's say you attack with a Kami of the Honored Dead, which goes unblocked because it's flying, and then you hit it with your own Eiganjo to gain 4 life, and then your Archangel of Thune puts 1/1s on all of your creatures. And it can still just be played as a land if you really want. This incredibly versatile land is literally the #1 white utility land in Commander, seeing a whopping 24% play in white decks. 2 legendary cards are being added to the tier list this time. First off, the original Eiganjo Castle. This card is probably about a C tier just on usefulness, but with it being one of the most influential places in all of Kamigawa, I've gotta bump it up to a B. Eiganjo Seat of the Empire is a much better card, being probably around A tier usefulness, and as rebuilt Eiganjo, it doesn't quite have the same legacy as the original castle, but it's still pretty important, and has lasted for like 1,000 years longer, so I think it probably also deserves a bump up, ending it up in S tier. Although it's definitely still a lower S tier than Beseiju. If you've made it this far in the video, might as well drop a like for turn and subscribe for more Landfield content. If I missed anything, got anything wrong, or you just have questions, Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next legendary locations with Geyer Reach Sanitarium.